Hello and welcome to this, the 16th of Ovid's Heroides, and this poem is unusual because it is written from the perspective of a man. No, I know, I feel weird about it too. What are they? Should we poke it with a stick? No, you shouldn't, that's wrong. But Paris is here writing to Helen, so Prince of Troy writing to Helen of Sparta in the hopes of persuading her to become Helen of Troy. You may remember Paris from letter 5 when Oenone, his wife, wrote to him saying, "Hey, where are you? Who's this Greek chick I keep hearing about? Oh, here she is." Well, actually, here she'll be next letter, because she writes back to him. The last 6 letters are pairs, so Paris to Helen, Helen to Paris. So we've got some 2 sides of the story coming up, which is fun. I say fun, obviously. My idea of fun might be different from yours. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure it's coincidence that this poem is 378, I think, lines long. This is the longest of all the poems. I can't imagine Ovid is making a point at all about the way men expand to fill the available space and then some. I'm sure this most controlled of poets just accidentally wrote a longer poem this time. I've nothing to add. Don't worry about that. It's really long. We're going to have to get going and we're going to have to skip over quite a lot of it. Otherwise we'll be here all day and I've got a book to edit. So sorry about that. Paris begins by saying, do I need to speak or is the flame of my love obvious? Of course it's obvious, Paris. That's the whole point of your letter. He does go on. I'm not going to lie. Or he says, again, we've heard this over and over again in these poems. I burn with love for you. He says, don't read these words with a hard face. Could you read them with a face that matches your beauty? Are you telling me to smile, Paris? Because that gets on my wick. I'm sure Helen has probably heard it enough. She's so pretty, why doesn't she just smile? Tell you what, maybe she's bored of you and your 380 lines, just saying. He makes his pitch, and it's not a bad one. He says, Aphrodite promised you to me for my bed. I've come all this way to find you. I mean, a goddess promised you is quite a good opening line, I think, in Greek myth. And then line 36, he said, I longed for you before I even knew you. Okay, at that point, that's quite charming. At this point, Paris, you might have a chance with me. It's the remaining 350 lines where you frankly don't cover yourself in glory. He tells her about Hecuba's dream. Yeah, Paris, tell me about your mum's dream. That sounds like a good date. Dies. She dreams, you might remember this from one of the earlier poems, but Oenones, I think. Is it Oenones? I'm going to say it is. Let's say it is and make it fact. That's how the internet works. Sorry. No, I do take it very seriously. I've read this whole, but it's 380 lines. Come on. Hecube has had this premonition, this dream when she is pregnant with Paris, that she's giving birth or will give birth to a flaming torch, and this of course will turn out to be Paris, who will be the cause of Troy being burned down. But just FYI, that's not how to impress a woman. Don't tell me about your mum's dream, I don't care. And then he goes on to talk about the judgment of Paris. The earth moved, he said, when the goddesses are sort of dumped in front of him on Mount Ida, line 59. Hermes, or I guess because we're in Roman versions, Mercury, tells him he has to make this judgment between the goddesses, and it's Aphrodite or Venus who wins. She offers him Helen as her bribe. I want you, and the way I want you, he says, girls have always wanted me. Girls always want me. I'm very desirable. It's like, you'd be more so if you didn't keep saying it. I'm just saying. Line 97, he says, for example, Oenone. There's Oenone. No one is worthier to be Priam's daughter-in-law other than you. She literally is Priam's daughter-in-law, Paris, because she's currently married to you. How is this your best opening gambit? Honestly, I just despair. He says, I built ships to sail to Sparta. So I suppose he is keen. You've got to give him that. He built some ships. Or I imagine someone else did the building, let's be honest, but there it is. He said he was about to set sail when his parents stop him, and Cassandra, his sister, she is the priestess who can famously see the future but isn't ever believed. Cassandra, with her hair flowing everywhere, for those of you who are keeping tabs on people who have messy hair in these poems, it's all of them. She asked, where are you rushing to? Where are you going? You'll bring back flame and inflagration. He believes Cassandra, but he misinterprets it. So this idea that Cassandra is never believed, well, he does believe her, but he thinks it's the fire of love. This is just another version of not believing her, of course. If you misinterpret her prophecies, then it's the same for her, from her perspective. Imagine, from her perspective, it's the same for her as simply not being believed in the first place. Perhaps it's a little less rude, but it makes no difference. No one hears her. He says, line 135, when I first saw you, I couldn't speak. I mean, Helen gets that a lot, let's be honest. He says, no wonder Theseus kidnapped you. I might not bring up the bit where Helen is kidnapped by Theseus when Helen is either 7 or 10, depending on our source, and Theseus is a man in his 50s. So I might bring up the bit where you're kidnapped as a child by a man who's basically a sex pest with a habit of killing people who've got big, what's the word? Horns, that's the word. And that's actually the wrong mime I see. That's antlers. I always get this wrong. What is it? That's it. Let's never talk of this again. Minotaur is what I was aiming for. I always do reindeer. I don't know what's wrong. It's not like there even are reindeer in Greek. I'm sorry. Actaeon, I guess that would be, wouldn't it? He's not in this story. Theseus is who we want. And Asterion, the Minotaur, you're welcome. So he says, I'm amazed he ever gave you back. That sex pest in his 50s who stole you when you were a child. I'm amazed he ever gave you back. I would rather lose my head. For those of you who are wondering exactly why I'd chosen this t-shirt, yeah, niche, right? That's a niche reference. You get 20 points if you worked that out before we got to this point, because you had to really know this poem and be au fait with 80s films of a certain calibre. Brackets, the calibre is excellent. There's nothing to discuss. He says, you'd know my loyalty. And that might not seem like very much, because obviously he's being disloyal to Oenone as we speak, but he is actually. Paris is loyal to Helen and she is loyal to him. So, maybe you can be both disloyal and loyal depending on the person. I'm not unworthy of you, he says. Trojans are descended from Jupiter, so he's pleased with his lineage. He says, when you see Troy, you'll be like, oh, Greece is really poor and impoverished. And this is an early example of negging, I'm going to say. You know where you're from, it's rubbish when you see where I'm from. Yeah, dude, stop talking. Although Sparta is rich. Oh, is he going to bring it back? Sparta's rich because it's where you were born. Oh, I'm going to say no, Paris. Just a little bit sleazy. Troy is so great. Paris, therefore, must also be great. Either way, Paris is better than Menelaus, and that's his real bid here. Line 215 to 216, he says he's not worthy of holding you during the night. So this is a very specific sexual jealousy that we're talking about. It's the thought of Menelaus touching Helen that upsets Paris so much. It kills me to watch him touching your neck, he says. A typical Ovid bit of detail. The intimacy of touching her neck in public where Paris can see it is what's so painful. He says, I groan, 229, I groan when I see it happen, and you can't stop laughing at my groaning. We just get an idea here of Helen being playful, is what he calls her, but perhaps she's a tiny bit cruel as well. He drinks to forget, because that's always the best thing to do, and then tells Helen, having been drinking, about his amorous exploits, pretending it happened to a friend. Yeah, mate, she's definitely not going to see through that gossamer thin web of lies. Let's see how this goes. 257, I'll tell you how it goes. He says, there was that time that your robe fell open and I got sight of your breasts and they were whiter than the snow or milk. I mean, a little bit cliched, but okay, that's a nice thing to say about someone's breasts. Whiter than snow, whiter than milk. Or Jove when he seduced your mother. What? Obviously Jove seduces Leda, Helen's mother, having taken on the form of a swan. But I'm not sure. Remember when your dad seduced your mum, and what it looked like is that it's not the best seduction, is what I'm saying. I'm going to keep saying it. I kissed your daughter as soon as you've kissed her, he says. Yeah, I mean, again, creepy, Paris. Just dial it down, could you? I flirted with your friend. Oh, stop talking. Flirted with your friends. They don't seem that impressed by me. I wonder why. He says, I'm struck by a divine arrow, just like my sister said, Cassandra again. And again, he's misinterpreted it. He thinks it's the arrow of love, the arrow of Cupid. But of course, it's the arrow of Apollo that Cassandra has seen, which will eventually be the death of Paris. Spoiler. He says, you can't be chaste, T-E, obviously we've done this before, because you're too pretty. And anyway, we'll get married, so it'll be fine. Once you've been unchaste, you'll then be married to me, so it will cancel it out. Good work. Menelaus doesn't appreciate you anyway, otherwise he wouldn't leave you with some foreign guy. And that probably is true. This is a constant rebuke against Menelaus, that he doesn't take Helen seriously enough and abandons her to Paris. He says, my ships are ready and waiting, line 331. My family will all bring you presents. Yeah, that's not how it's going to work out when we read this story in the Iliad, not going to lie. Why would the act of me abducting you or you running away with me start a war? He says, it doesn't usually start a war. It literally does usually start a war where Helen's concerned. Paris, when Theseus abducts her, it causes a war between her brothers, the Dioscuri, and Athens. It literally started. This would be the second war in her life. But he does have examples that back up his cause. Jason and Medea, Theseus and Ariadne, no war. But, and even if there is a war, he says, ooh, nice comeback. Asia is rich in men and horses, so they wouldn't lose the war. Bad news ahead. He says, I'm great at fighting anyway. Again, that won't happen in the Iliad, not going to lie. And then finally, line 376, he says, elope with me and you'll become incredibly famous. Dude, she's already incredibly famous. She's literally the daughter of Zeus and her mum was seduced by a god as a swan. She's doing fine in terms of fame. But we will find out more about what Helen thinks with the next letter because that is her reply. Till then, have a lovely time and I'll see you next time.